guys, welcome back to The Bright Side. Macy here, the Bright Side Girl, and today we are doing my June audiobook wrap-up. I've got some nice like 80s hair going today for whatever reason. I'm going to begin this wrap-up saying that I listened to 12 audiobooks this month. Now, let me just clarify a few things before everybody like freaks out. First of all, at least 2 or 3 of them were very short audiobooks, like under 3 hours. So technically you could count that as one, which would like knock my total down. Second off, I work from home entirely now, and I've been able to listen to audiobooks while I work, especially if it's a book that I am wanting to reread via audiobook, which is the majority of what I did this month. I was able to listen to a lot of them that way. And then most of the books that I listened to were already pretty short. They were just like, you know, YA, mermaid books, and contemporary books and things like that. So I'm going to start off first with the mermaid book section because I think like 10 or 11 of them were mermaid related, and then I'm going to end the video with the non-mermaid books. So if you're wanting to skip the mermaid section, I'll put a little timestamp in the comments of where you can skip to if you don't care about mermaids, because this video is going to be majority about mermaid books. Okay, first up, I started the month listening to The Little Mermaid by Hans Christian Andersen. This is like a 1-hour audiobook. This book is narrated by Emma Fenney. She has a wonderful English-speaking accent that was just so awesome for this audiobook. I am going to list all of the narrators down below in the comments as well, so if you guys want to look any of them up, please do. But she was so good, and this is a children's fairy tale, but it read like a regular like YA fantasy. If you guys didn't know, The Little Mermaid fairy tale is very different from The Little Mermaid, the Disney movie. It is a lot darker, a lot more heart-wrenching and detailed, and very Hans Christian Andersen. His tales are always kind of like tragic and dark. I really liked it. The ending is very strange. I don't want to spoil anything, but just the very end after the kind of main conclusion, kind of odd and strange, but I really enjoyed it. It's just so lovely and heartbreaking, and I was so into it. I was like worried about listening to it while I was driving because I was so like in this underwater world. This follows our Little Mermaid. She is not named in the book, I don't believe. She is the littlest princess of a mermaid kingdom, and her biggest desire is to be with humans and be around humans and all that kind of stuff. But they're only allowed to go up on land or like above the water once on their 18th birthday, and they might be able to do it once a year after that, but I don't think so. They're just forbidden to have contact with humans because of dangers that can occur and all that kind of stuff. So anyway, I think she breaks it, or she finally waits till her birthday, or something happens. Anyway, I don't want to give the story away, but it is her tale and her meeting a handsome prince, and things go off from there. It does follow the Little Mermaid movie a little bit, but it varies quite a bit as far as like the outcome. Lovely, enchanting. If you guys have a quick hour, listen to The Little Mermaid. Next up, I listened to Monstrous Beauty, narrated by Katherine Kellgren. Hopefully I'm pronouncing that right. I did a book talk about this. I will link that down below, so I'm not going to go into major detail here. The beginning part is spoiler free, and then the middle part is spoiler filled. This was a reread via audiobook for me, and I'm so glad I did it. As I've mentioned several times, this is now one of my all-time favorite mermaid books, even though the first time I read it kind of freaked me out, because still to this day I have read probably like 15, 16 mermaid books. This is the darkest mermaid book I have ever read. It is super dark. They call it a Little Mermaid retelling, but in my opinion it's not really that close to the fairy tale at all. This follows 2 perspectives. This follows a mermaid named Syringa in the past, and then in the future a young girl named Hester, so we get dual time frames there, and both stories are just enchanting and really dark and brutal. There are trigger warnings for rape and violence in this, so if you're super sensitive to that, I would skip it. In my opinion, it wasn't like out of control, but it is very dark for a YA book. I really enjoyed this book so much. I think that Elizabeth Hvam is purely a genius, the way that she ties everything together and just the way that the 2 stories interconnect. So this one has some spooky vibes as well, so it's good for the fall, and oh, it's really good. Then I listened to Atlantia by Ali Condi, narrated by Rebecca Soler, who's my favorite audiobook narrator at the moment. I try to listen to like one of her books a month. She is awesome. I was so excited when I found out she does Atlantia. This is technically not a mermaid book. It is a siren tale though, as far as, you know, people using their voices to control things. It does have siren-esque moments, but there's no like actual mermaids with tails and things like that. This is set in Atlantia, which is an underwater city. It's kind of got dystopian vibes. Basically, the world has gone to ruin and we have figured out a way to create an underwater city. Some people stay above ground to help run the city below, where their siblings or their families or whatever are living in there. And then the Atlantia is basically like this awesome utopia. You can choose, I think once a year on your birthday or something, whether or not you want to go up and like help the land and live with the land, even though the air is hard to breathe and all that kind of stuff. So the world in here is so well done. I think this is Ali Condi's best book. It is absolutely one of my favorites. It was so fun to listen to it on audiobook. The characters are sweet. There's a little tiny romance in here. Main character Rio is just so full of adventure and drive, and she is obsessed with the world up above and she wants to go up there, so something happens. But anyway, this one's so good. I've been preaching it for a long time. Beautiful cover and beautiful on the inside as well. Then I listened to The Siren by Kiera Cass, and this one is narrated by Arielle DeLisle. Hopefully, again, I'm pronouncing that correctly. She did a pretty good job. It wasn't like my favorite audiobook narrator, but it wasn't like that I couldn't listen to it and get into the story. Pretty decent for like this particular story. Me and this book have like mixed feelings. It's kind of a 3.5 star book for me. This is a story about a girl who becomes a mermaid, and their job as mermaids are to sink ships to feed the ocean and keep the ocean happy. And the ocean is a character in this one. And that is my main problem with this book. I did a book talk on The Siren as well, which I will also list down below. I really enjoy the romance in here. I like the characters. I like the sisterly bonds that she has with the other mermaids. I like the fact that she cannot speak on land. Otherwise people like want to kill themselves. And she is mute basically when they're on land. They can like shed their fins and go on land and hang out with humans and stuff like that. They live for a long time too. But this one I have mixed reviews about. You can watch my book talk if you are more interested. Watch the first part and the rest of it is spoilery. But yeah, I really enjoyed this one by Kiera Cass. It's just like not my favorite. Then I listened to one that I didn't reread, and it was Mermaid by Carolyn Turgeon, narrated by Rosalyn Landor. I've been eyeing this one for a while because it has such a beautiful cover. Like, the audiobook cover is pretty, the paperback cover is pretty, and the hardcover is beautiful. Anyway, regardless of that, this one is probably the truest Little Mermaid retelling that I have read so far. So much so that it almost made me not like it, because she literally followed pretty much everything from the book and then just added her own things into it, which like I enjoyed it because I like The Little Mermaid, but I also don't know like how original it is. It's so hard with fairy tale retellings because you want them to follow along with the original fairy tale, but you don't want them to be like exactly the same. Oh my gosh, she did such a good job narrating it. She was very similar to the woman that narrated The Little Mermaid, which was kind of interesting, and it was really good. I would recommend doing them back to back if you're planning on listening to them. It has like a mixed feeling love story for me. So this one is about a little mermaid that lives under the sea and is a princess, and then also a princess that lives on land that winds up seeing the mermaid save a prince. And they both wind up falling in love with the prince, and you wind up falling in love with both princesses, and there is a war going on between kingdoms. Our little mermaid wants to become a human, and then our main princess kind of wants to become a mermaid, and our prince doesn't have any idea what's going on. But he is really kind of dumb, in my opinion, and I didn't really enjoy like his part in it. I enjoyed the like the female aspects of it and the like somewhat relationship between the two princesses, and just the relationship between our little mermaid and her sisters, and just I don't know, the way the story was told was really beautiful, but I wouldn't go into it for like the love story aspect, because that one in my opinion was like not the greatest and pretty old-fashioned as far as like the man being mostly in control and everything. Anyway, I did really enjoy this one. It really captured my heart, especially on audiobook. It's one I'll probably be rereading again in the future. And yeah, you should check it out. And last of the mermaid books that I reread was the Lost Voices trilogy by Sarah Porter. So I listened to Lost Voices, Waking Storms, and The Twice Lost. They're all narrated by Julia Whelan, and she did a decent job. At first I wasn't sure because it kind of had that like overly teenagery thing going on, which I don't really know how to explain. Again, for this book it was kind of appropriate because it has some of those just the language in here and stuff like that has some of that younger vibe to it. So I did really enjoy listening to it. This is my favorite mermaid book / series still to date, even though some of those other ones came really close. It's just the world building in here is so thorough. You get a real view of like how mermaids were created, why they're there, why they have to kill people, why they want to kill people. So this one is about our lead girl, Lucette Korchak, and she is basically a traveling kid with her father who is kind of a bum, and he kind of like steals things and hops around a lot, and she's just like always on the road with him. Decides that he wants to settle down, gets a job on a fishing crew, and then she lives with her uncle while he is away at sea, and then something happens and the ship never comes back, so he is assumed dead, and she's in sole custody of her uncle, who's verbally abusive and like verging on physically abusive. This story is about her and mermaids and basically things that happen and I just really enjoy the mermaid world in this. Trigger warnings for violence in this one because there are a lot of like rough relationships with like daughters and their parents and their caretakers and stuff like that, but this one is so good. The mermaid system in this is so well thought out. Things that happen are so interesting. This is my third time reading it, my first time listening to it, and I just love being in this world. I just like the characters. There is a little bit of a romance that happens in book 2 that I don't really care for. I kind of like how it concludes, but you don't read these ones for the romance. You read it for the like girl power and the girl relationships and the changing the world and the being a strong person and finding out who you are and like all that kind of stuff. There are some really annoying like villain characters in here that are just so obnoxious, but I think that kind of makes you like the book more because you just can't believe that someone so obnoxious is around. And I can't go into too much detail because I really liked not knowing a lot going into this one, but just know that it is just fantastic. So now we're going to go into the books that I listened to that were not mermaid related. Okay, very early on in the month I listened to Night of Cake and Puppets by Laini Taylor, narrated by Khristine, Hvam, and Kevin T. Collins. I did not do this one justice because I was so ready for Mermaid Marathon and I did not finish this one in time to like start Mermaid Marathon, and so it was much better than I felt like it was in my head. I was just kind of like wanting to get through it so that I could listen to my mermaid books. I really enjoy it. This one is a novella about the Daughter of Smoke and Bone trilogy, so I can't give away too much about it. It's about two beloved side characters in this book and kind of their relationship and how they got to be together. I love Khristine Hvam as a narrator. She is right up there with Rebecca Soler, and Kevin T. Collins is one of my favorite male narrators. He narrates the Beautiful Creatures series. I recognized him right away even though he was doing a Russian accent, which he did okay, not as good as Khristine, but he did all right. It's just really precious. It's like a 2-hour audiobook and I really enjoyed it. Next up, I listened to Girl in Pants and Forever in Blue by Anne Brashares, narrated by Angela Goethals. And both of these are also rereads for me from like a long time ago though, back like in my early 20s. Contemporary, love them. Some of my absolute favorite contemporary books. I just love this series. It doesn't get much love on book 2 because it's like from my generation rather than from some of the booktubers out there, but you guys should definitely read it. It is just so good. It was so much fun to listen to on audiobook. I flew through these in like a day each and they're like 6 or 7 hours. They're really short though. You can get through the whole series pretty fast because of how it reads and you can do other things because it's nothing major that's happening that you would like miss a major plot point like you would like on a fantasy book. I really loved them. This is the third and fourth book in the series. I talked about the first two in my May audiobook wrap-up, so you guys can go watch that one if you want to learn more about the series, but really great reread, and I'm really excited now because I can go on to 2 other books that continue on with the series that came out much later and that I never got around to, so stay tuned for that. Next up, hopefully you guys are still in there, I listened to Legendary by Stephanie Garber, narrated by Rebecca Soler. And I was so excited that this came in on time. I was hoping it would come in time for May because I didn't want to be in the middle of Mermaid Marathon, but it was so good that it didn't matter. I just traded for the book. I'm so excited. I never have books this early, but the cover is so pretty too. This one, if you're not familiar, is the second book in the Caraval, think trilogy now, and it is fantastic. There's a traveling group called Caraval that does this like mystery magic show that you have to get invited to and that you can win a prize at the end of, and then all these mystical, magical, mysterious things happen during the event. There are 2 sisters in this story, and the first book follows our main character Scarlett. Her and her sister Tessa go off to Caraval and get invited, and then Tessa gets lost, and the whole time Scarlett has to find her and figure out whether it's part of the game or whether it's like something serious, and what's real and what's not real. You just never know. So mysterious. You really legitimately do not know what is happening ever. The little things that happen in here, you have to trade certain things to get certain things, and I don't want to give anything away, but it is so wonderful. I don't want to tell you what the second book is about, obviously, because it gives away the first book. I am so excited that there is a third book coming out. It is one of my all-time favorite series now. I literally can't focus on anything else when I'm listening to this, so definitely check it out and reread it via audiobook if you haven't listened to it, because this is one of the books that really made me love Rebecca Soler, was Caraval and Legendary. Okay, almost done. The last book that I'm going to talk about is probably the most exciting one, and I listened to Scythe by Neil Shusterman, narrated by Greg Tremblay. I listened to this with my husband. We went on a Big Bear trip and I asked him if he would listen to an audiobook with me. And so we listened to the majority of it on the drive up and the drive back, and then we finished it like just in time for this wrap up. Oh my gosh. I was hoping this would be one that like wasn't like too girly and things like that, and I was correct, and I knew he was gonna like it. So hopefully that vlog will be up really soon. It's taken me a long time to edit it, even though we went on it like 2 weeks ago, but I have to do a book talk on this book because Scythe blew me away. So if you guys don't know and haven't heard, Scythe is about a futuristic utopian world, a utopian version of the world we live in today, where we have solved everything. We have no pain, we have no illness, our emotions are more under control, there literally aren't even prisons anymore, there's not a government, we also are immortal, and on top of being immortal, we can reset how we look. So we still age normally, as far as like each year we look older and older, but we can reset at any point we want until I think down to like 25. So, you know, once you're 90, if you want to get up that high, you can reset and look like you're 25 again. And because of this, people will like have new families and start their lives over and have kids again. And so they wind up having like all of these different kids, and it's just crazy. So because of this, because no one ever officially died, you can die technically, but you just get revived like within 2 days. So kids are like doing that for fun, and it's like crazy, and they don't understand like what pain and heartbreak and all those things are like. So because of that, the system has come up with what they call scythes. It's basically kind of like a mortal grim reaper, and it's people that apprentice to basically kill people, but they call it gleaning. So they have to do this to keep the population under control because nobody ever dies. So they're allowed to glean so many people per year. There's a whole system in place of certain rules and things that they have to follow, but they're very, very limited. There's not much rules for the scythes. There's not really that much governing them except for like their own scythedom. And everybody has their own different ways of gleaning. They can use like everything from like fire to poison to blades to choking, like all kinds of stuff. Originally when it was created, the Scythe's intention was that you really shouldn't be a Scythe unless you don't want to be a Scythe, because they wanted it to be very morally and consciously run so that you had conscious awareness of like what you were doing and you didn't become numb to it. Anyway, that was a long description. I don't think I gave away too much, but I absolutely loved this book. It was so creepy to me in the beginning. I don't know why. Everyone else said it wasn't scary to them, but in the beginning part, it like really freaked me out because they're talking about like the different ways you can glean people. And we have two characters in this book that are apprenticing to be Scythes, and the world is so crazy. It's just so crazy, and Neal Shusterman has just created such a detailed, like almost Harry Potter level detailed, from down to the fact that like the Scythes pick their names based on old like famous people like Mary Curie, things like that. And it's just so genius. I think this is going to be one of my all-time favorite series. I predict that this is going to be like one of the next big things. It's already big here on YouTube, but I kind of predict that we're going to get close to like a Hunger Games level big, because I think that once this like the last book comes out and it's going to become a movie, I think as well, it's just going to blow up because it's so genius. And I could talk about it forever, but I'll save that for my book talk. But my husband really liked it. He's like, yeah, I liked it. He never wants to be like, yeah, I loved it. But he did. He really enjoyed it. We listened to it at night before we went to bed. He was like so curious. The endings and the twists and the turns and all the things that happened, just my brain could not comprehend what was going to happen because the world was that well thought out and that well introduced. So something completely different than I've ever read before, kind of dystopian, kind of utopian society, a little bit sci-fi, just absolutely genius. I'm like in love, and I cannot wait to get into Thunderhead, and I can't wait for the third book next year. And oh my gosh, talk to me in the comments below without being spoilery about how much you love Scythe if you have read it, because yeah, I loved it. Okay, you guys, that is all for my June audiobook wrap-up. I am very sorry that this was so long and that I had so many audiobooks. I think next month I will definitely have less, just because I don't think I'm going to be listening to quite so many like little bitty short ones, and there isn't quite as many things that I want to like cram in, hopefully. But thank you so much for tuning in, and I will see you guys next time on the bright side. Bye!